Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very honored to be joined a very special space champion, Professor El-Gabry, who is currently a professor at Princeton University, where she teaches courses in fluid mechanics and thermodynamics and supervises student research in various areas of mechanical engineering. She earned her PhD in mechanical engineering from RPI and was appointed assistant professor at the American University in 2006 and tenured and promoted to associate professor in 2012. Prior to her academic appointment, she held various engineering and research roles at General Electric. Her work included gas turbine blade cooling design, combustion controls, experimental heat transfer, generator ventilation design, and project engineering and computational fluid dynamics and heat transfer methods development for energy and propulsion. So you can see she has a wider range of topics that she's been a part of and a lot of cool projects probably. Professor El-Gabry is the recipient of 5 NASA Glenn Faculty Fellowships, the Air Force Faculty Fellowship, and the KTH Royal Institute of Technology Fellowship, where she served as affiliate senior faculty for several years. She is currently a visiting research fellow and was a senior principal engineer at Solar Turbines in San Diego. I'm so excited to talk with her today and about her research work and getting into the space industry. Welcome, Professor El-Gabry. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to do this interview.
Thank you for having. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to learn about really how you got into the space industry in more depth. But before, what does your typical day look like? What do you currently do, and how does it run?
So currently I teach at Princeton University. So, and it's kind of the typical has become pandemic typical. So we'll describe what that's like. I've been working remotely. I teach a course called Energy Technologies for the 21st Century. And I also teach a fluid mechanics lab. And so my day basically starts with some course prep, getting ready for my class, and then I teach my class or my lab. And then I also have research that I'm trying to publish. So during my non-teaching time, I try to work on revising and writing and things like that.
That's awesome. I'm actually really curious. You said you were working on a few research projects. What is the most exciting project or research that you worked on or are currently working on?
Um, there's a lot of exciting ones. So um,
You can name a
one
few if you'd like.
Sure. I also actually, a big part of my day is supervising student research. So I didn't mention that, but I'm currently supervising 6 student projects, and those are exciting as well. So some of the work that I've been doing is in gas turbine heat transfer. So I have a paper that I'm working on right now, doing some edits on that looks at using additive manufacturing to make cooling holes for the gas turbine. The gas turbine is what's used in jet propulsion. It's also used in land-based power production. But it's very challenging because if you want more power out of an engine, you have to raise the temperature. And if you raise the temperature, the materials could not be able
Degrade.
to withstand it. So cooling is critical. In the gas turbine, you have parts operating at temperatures that exceed their melting point. So the only way that's feasible is through cooling schemes. And with additive manufacturing, you no longer have to restrict yourself to traditional manufacturing methods. So you can open up the design space quite a bit. So that's what we've done. We've attempted to come up with a non-traditional cooling hole that outperforms current technology quite significantly. And it's in anticipation of additive manufacturing being ready to receive these new ideas.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I've been actually doing a lot of research on that because I've been working with 2 undergrad students from Central University of Central Florida, and they're doing something a little similar where they're trying to analyze, on turbines, there's a thermal barrier coating, and they're analyzing how that degrades when it interacts with different materials like sea
Yeah,
mass. And so that's kind of a little similar to what you're doing. So I thought it'd be cool.
absolutely, absolutely. Actually, when I used to design gas turbines for GE, we had to anticipate in our design some amount of spallation of the thermal barrier coating, and our goal was to make sure that the turbine components can maintain life requirements even in the face of thermal barrier coating spallation, particularly in the leading edge and in the hub and root areas, which are kind of more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so you said you were mentioning how you worked with students at Princeton University, and you're working currently with 6 projects, which is really cool. So you probably have had some amazing experiences with these students. So could you share maybe a favorite research you've worked on with them, or one of your favorite moments with them?
Um, well, I'm currently trying to set up an integrated aquaponics and hydroculture system here at Princeton. Last summer, I hired a group of summer interns here from Princeton, and we worked with students at the American University in Cairo in Egypt to come up with an integrated aquaponic and hydroculture system for a desert village oasis in the Western Desert in Egypt. Now, what is integrated aquaponics and hydroculture? Um, Egypt has a lot of problems, and one of them is water scarcity. And so in water scarcity also ties to food production. If you don't have a lot of water, you can't produce enough food. So what we wanted to do was to implement a system that uses hydroponics instead of soil. So if you use hydroponics, which means the roots are embedded directly in the water rather than in soil, you can reduce the amount of water that you consume by 90%. So a few years ago, we had installed a wind pump. So it uses wind energy to pump water from a well, but the amount of water that you can pump with wind is pretty small. So, but if you use that water for a hydroponic system, then it's not small at all because you need a lot less water if you're using that type of system. So that's hydroponics. By tying in aquaculture, what that means is instead of using chemical fertilizers for the plants, we have fish, and the fish produce um, wastes that provide the nutrients to the plants. And the plants clean the water for the fish, and so you can have a circular farming system. And then the fish grow and they form a source of protein for the villagers, and the plants grow and they form a source of food crop. And so that was a system that we installed last summer. And I wanted to do some more like lab scale research and maybe implement a similar system to study here at Princeton. So I've been working with 2 students. One of the students is working on the actual design of the system, the tanks, the pumps, the filters, etc. And the other student is looking at automating the system. So she's using some Arduinos and sensors and is trying to come up with an app that would control parameters that would ensure the fish live. It's actually one of the most difficult parts is when you start up a system, the fish need just the right conditions to be able to survive, the right temperatures, pH levels, oxygen levels, etc. So that's an interesting project. It has a lot of hurdles and obstacles. So every time we have a little bit of an accomplishment, it feels really great.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. And I'm actually really curious, what was your inspiration behind this project or developing this? Was there a personal story or a paper you read, or what was the inspiration?
Yeah, so before I came to Princeton, I worked at the American University in Cairo, and I have a colleague there who works a lot and lives actually for long periods of time in the desert. And the desert is just such a wonderful challenge, and it's actually a beautiful place to visit as well. So I went there for a field trip with my students, and I fell in love with the place, and I really wanted to help. And this particular oasis is very remote, so there's no electric grid that the government doesn't really provide them with electricity or running water or any of these things that we're so accustomed to. So it really is harsh. They have some diesel generators, and they get diesel fuel trucked from Cairo, like about 100 kilometers out to this desert. And it's occasional, and it's just it's really a challenge. So I find that appealing when something is challenging and exciting and it could be of use. Um, I find that really appealing. And so I ended up working on a project with her, and then one project led to the other. We installed the wind pump. Well, it was also with a group of students actually 2 summers ago in Egypt. And then we saw that it wasn't producing enough water. So then we had, well, we had the idea of trying to tie it into an integrated aquaponics and hydroculture system that doesn't need a lot of water in the first place so that the community can see a benefit from the wind pump. And that the integrated aquaponic and hydroponic system uses solar energy. So wind for the pumping and solar for the circulation of the water. And it's a really great opportunity because you don't have electricity in remote areas. So it's a great application for renewables where it really is your only option, pretty much, or your best option. I mean, you have diesel, but yeah.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I didn't know about this system or the way you could use it. So thank you for explaining that. I think that this research should actually be more commonly used. And I'm so glad your inspiration. This is what I love about science and research and engineering is you can actually take a problem, something that affects all of us or most of us, and actually create a solution out of it. So I'm really glad to see that.
There's there are some commercial systems, but they're very niche and they're very expensive. So out in the
Mm.
West Coast, there may be some Michelin star restaurant that commissions or takes that grows some very unique leafy vegetable from a very expensive
Yeah.
um, aquaponics system. But that's not where you're going to have the greatest impact, in my opinion. The greatest impact is feeding the masses, solving the world food problem, the food water shortage problem. So I would like for this technology to be directed towards a larger scale and lower cost and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely can see its potential. I'm very excited to see how it plays out. I'm very intrigued. I have to do a lot of research on this one after our interview. So my next question is, how did you get into fluid mechanics and thermodynamics and mechanical engineering? I feel like that's a very specific area of study, and a lot of people don't realize what it is, and especially high school students. So could you explain how you got into it?
By accident.
Like most most careers. Yes.
um, Actually, when I was in high school, I had a lot of things that I wanted to be, and one of them was engineering, and I just sort of ended up in engineering. But it wasn't engineering, mechanical engineering, it was biomedical engineering. So I started out as an undergrad at RPI, and they had this program where you can do your undergrad at RPI in biomed and then go on to med school. And that was my plan at the time at Albany Med. And then I ended up having some family issues, so I did not finish at RPI. I went back to Cairo with Egypt with my family, and I wanted to transfer my credits from RPI, and the one institution where it was relatively easy to do that was an American university in Egypt, and that's where I ended up teaching after I finished my PhD. So the options there were mechanical and civil. There was no biomedical. And so I said, well, let me do mechanical because it really is broad enough that if I wanted to do biomedical for grad school, I can easily do that. So I ended up doing mechanical engineering and I liked it. And so I ended up doing my master's and PhD in mechanical. Now, how did I get into fluids and heat transfer? That was also kind of an interesting story. It was my least favorite subject in undergrad.
Oh, wow.
I had straight A's, and my first non-A was in fluid mechanics. And once you lose your 4.0 GPA, it's gone forever. So that left. I was like, okay. And then when I worked at GE, my first assignment, I was part of this Edison. It's a program called Edison Engineering Development Program. So you have 4 different assignments in different groups in engineering. And the first one is kind of chosen for you, but then you get to move around when you're there. You can meet other people and move around to where you want. So my first one was in designing cooling circuits for the gas turbine. So that's heavily fluid mechanics and heavily heat transfer, my least favorite. When I started working on it, it was a lot of fun. My favorite subject as an undergrad was controls and robotics and things like
Yeah.
that. So my second assignment, I went into combustion controls, thinking that I'm going to be, having the time of my life, fulfilling my lifetime goal, whatever my goal of doing controls, and I didn't really like it as much. So it goes to show like what you're taking in class is doesn't always translate to what's exciting when you work. And I'm really glad I had the opportunity to do that because then when I went back for my master's, I did my master's in fluid mechanics and heat transfer, and I built a career out of it. And that's my passion. Maybe things in school like what time the class is and how nice the professor is influence your perception of the subject, but the subject on its own could be really exciting when you're actually out there practicing it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I feel like in high school, especially when students are starting to think of careers before going to college, they
Mhm.
always get demotivated or choose their careers based off of their classes. So, for
Yeah.
example, they're like, oh, my history and science, my history class is like the easiest. So maybe I should go into something with history and not like science. I think science is interesting, but it's such a hard class. I think I would do horrible if I went into it. So
Yeah.
they like get automatically like these biases based
Mhm.
off of like their teachers or their experiences of their grades, which can, ultimately lead to wrong decisions of what really intrigues them. So I'm glad that you were able to find your passion, even if it was
I mean, I
in a
have
different.
other passions too. Like when I was in high school, I was thinking about going to Georgetown and being a foreign service officer. I was very much interested in languages and travel. I was even an exchange student in Paraguay while I was in high
Wow,
school.
that's so
And
cool.
I thought I was going to change Latin American politics forever by being in the foreign service. And I didn't do that. So I ended up going into engineering, but I still travel. I mean, I traveled to Egypt, like I told you, in the desert, and I still have those passions, but I figured you can pursue travel, you can pursue those things, um, kind of, I don't want to say on the side, but you can't do engineering on the side. Like I can self-teach myself, or I can teach myself Spanish, right? And I can make opportunities to immerse myself in the language, but you can't really teach yourself engineering, and it's just too difficult. So if I had to choose between learning Spanish, even though I love it, and learning engineering, I would study engineering in a degree program and find some ways to use um, my hobbies or even my work, find collaborations in Spanish speaking countries or whatever to develop my those other interests. But
Definitely, you
you
can
can't go the other way
combine.
around though. You can't really go
Yeah.
around the other way around. You can't self teach yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
So
It's hard. You can definitely combine interests like you were mentioning.
yeah.
And so I'm curious, you studied in RPI here and then you transferred to American University in Cairo. Was there like a difference for you in terms of like environment, educational experiences, or was it an easy transition?
I have a kind of an interesting life story. I'm Egyptian by birth, and we immigrated to the United States when I was in first, second grade. But my parents are Egyptians and they spoke Arabic with us at home. So it wasn't completely foreign. And we would go back to Egypt every summer, every other summer, to visit family and to stay with family there during our summer holidays. So it was not like it was a
Yeah,
complete
like
foreign
completely.
experience to me. Um, but nonetheless, when you go visit a country, it's not the same as when you live in a country. So I
100%. I
found,
can tell you that because I go to India sometimes because that's where my parents came from. And I'm like, oh, vacation is awesome, but I can't imagine living there for, a few years.
so there was still a little bit of struggles that way. Um, there was also, and I think it's my fault a little bit, there was also a sense that if I could be a 4.0 RPI and it's a really difficult program, then I didn't really I shouldn't really have any issues with the program in Egypt. And that was false. It's still really quite challenging. Students are very bright, so you can't, and they know a lot more math, I think, but we had a lot of like in RPI, we had a lot of software that we could use to solve math, like Maple and MATLAB. In Egypt, they were just really competent at doing things by hand faster and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was still kind of challenging.
Yeah, definitely. I bet. I'm sure of it. I see, in India, the use of calculators is much less than here. A
Mhm.
lot of mental math goes on. Like I remember I was visiting because I go there for vacations or sometimes during the summer to visit my grandparents. And some
Mhm.
of the neighbors were like, I've never used a calculator in my life and I'm in high school. And I'm like, I started using a calculator in middle school to like, figure out quadratic equations. Like we really didn't do all that mentally. And
Yeah.
so I think it was really different countries do it differently. And so I'm glad it was not too harsh of a transition, but it was still a unique experience for you. And so I'm curious, as a woman, did you ever have, because of your gender identification, did you ever have obstacles to pursue the higher education you did?
Um,
Whether it be because of stereotypes, or maybe you felt like you had other responsibilities as a mother that you just, you couldn't be able to get a job, or did you ever have any obstacles or, confusions or imposter syndrome?
um, yeah, I'm older, so I grew up in an area where we weren't really in touch with um, mental health issues. And if you were bullied, you just were, and you took it as part of life. So unfortunately, I kind of grew up in that mindset. And there were lots of reasons for people to bully me. And one of them only was women. The biggest thing that I was bullied about, like growing up, was my religion, right? So I look different. I'm brown. I'm Arab, and in the time when I was growing up, it was during the Iraqi War, the Iran-Contra affair. So this probably sounds like ancient history to you, but there were a lot of images of people that look like me doing horrible things, and so that was inflicted on me. And then I also grew up during September 11th, so I immediately became a target of a lot of um, you'd be driving down and you get the middle finger and say, go back to your country. And there was just a lot of association with things that were happening that had absolutely nothing to do with me and my family, but were inflicted otherwise. So like woman was one of them, but there were bigger, harsher ones. Um,
Yeah, I'm actually really shocked to hear that. I feel like we're in this, I mean, I'm sure now it hopefully has improved. I'm not sure. However, I know that, because of some certain appearances, the way you feel about yourself sometimes is different. So I'm really glad we're in a situation right now where we're trying to improve the conditions.
yeah.
I remember one time my father, he was telling me when he first came to the US, it was like early, sorry, early 2000s, and he was saying he was on a subway station, a different country, not Virginia, sorry, not a different state, not Virginia. And he was saying how he was on a subway and someone thought he was Muslim, and they were like, oh, you're a terrorist. And I'm so scared of, like, they were like insulting him, thinking he was a terrorist. Like immediately when people see certain types of people or certain religions, they're always like, oh, okay, so if you're this, you're a terrorist, or if you're this, you're this. I feel like stereotypes even exist in high school. Like if you're Asian or if you're a certain color or certain ethnicity, they expect you to be a certain way or be good at certain things. So if you're like Asian, they think you can't be good at sports or athletic. And I've been playing since third grade, so I completely disagree with stereotypes. And so a
Yeah.
part of my interview series is really to show diversity and to break these stereotypes and show young girls out there who look like you, who look like everyone else, that you can be a part of space, you can do anything you want. And all these misconceptions are wrong. Just because one person did something doesn't equate to everyone doing that, because there are so many people in different backgrounds who do different things, good and bad. So I think it's important to acknowledge that we're all people at the end of the day, and we all want to do the same thing of like learning and exploring together. So I'm really glad you shared your story. Thank you.
Yeah. And I had very supportive parents, and it really built character. So, for example, I started wearing the hijab, which made me look even more Muslim. I mean, I was as a kid, I wasn't wearing it, but then as I got a little bit older, I really took pride in my heritage and my upbringing, and it became part of who I was and my identity. Even though, like, if you were gonna try to stick out less, you would go the other way. You would try to look as American as possible and try to look as least Arab as you possibly, which is impossible and it's difficult. It's who you are. But anyway, so rather than that causing me to hide my identity, it actually strengthened my resolve and made me even more um, more determined to be the best that I can and not to be hiding or afraid of you know what people think or say about me.
I think that's
I also find that being a woman, even to this day, even in the most modern of countries. So, for example, I was in Stockholm a few years ago as on a sabbatical there, and Sweden is one of the most progressive countries in the world. And I was in a room of 40 people at a department meeting, and I was the only woman still in this day and age. Um, and yeah,
that's very shocking to
so
hear.
it is. I work in an area that is more male dominated. So it's mechanical engineering, it's gas turbine propulsion, and the department that I was in was called Energy Technology Department. And so it's just how it is. And the higher up you go, the more you are alone. So I see like at the graduate student level, there are less females than the undergraduate, and then less obviously than in high school. So as you go up, there are less and less women that are moving up in the academic um, world. I also find, and this could be just me, that I'm always in a need to prove myself. So I actually work harder, and I feel like I make bigger sacrifices because I don't want to be perceived as the person that's not doing the work because I have kids at home or I have things like that. So I make totally sure that I don't forego an opportunity. And I had really support. Growing up, I had a supportive mom, so she would help me with my little one, and I have a supportive husband now. So all that really is helpful. But I try to make sure that that misconception can't be said about me. I think if I were a male, I probably wouldn't be as concerned. But I don't know. I just don't want
Yeah,
that
I've actually heard of
stereotype.
that before. Yeah, I know I've heard of that. I mean, first off, I'm really shocked that you were the only woman in the room in this day and age. I feel like we've really progressed, but I guess there's still a lot of, work that needs to be done to encourage females that, if they want to do, they should, pursue it higher. I even read a study earlier saying, if you don't get to girls at a young age, so before high school, they tend to not go into engineering and they tend not to go into the STEM fields as highly as males do. And so I think, showing these girls the capabilities and the opportunities they have, and
Mhm.
how just because they're not really good at science or they don't think they're strong in calculus doesn't mean they can't be a part of a certain industry. And, get breaking those stereotypes is really important.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I've also read this that some girls are very good at everything. Because a girl could be a young woman could find herself excelling in English and excelling in math and science. So she picks English because she excels in that. Well, you're also excelling in the other one. So why are you
Yeah.
avoiding the sciences and going to the arts? You are equally competent in both. So it's not a matter of abilities. I think the young women do have abilities to do really um, phenomenal work in the sciences. Um, but
It's just
for some
exposure, I
reason,
guess.
yeah, exposure and maybe knowing that you can, and maybe more support, um,
Yeah.
and more opportunities, because maybe the class is not exciting, but like I said, the work is. So maybe finding opportunities to job shadow or to do summer programs where you're working with your hands on engineering things in a team that's fun and exciting on a topic that could change the world. Just there, it
Yeah.
comes as a whole package. It's not just your single physics class or chemistry class. It's an
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really feel like internships, job opportunities, I mean, research, I mean, just even asking someone who's in the industry want to go into like, hey, I really am interested in this. Could you please tell me more about your work and just, get into it more and understand if maybe that's a career you want to do and not just completely just, oh, I hate my science class, even though I'm doing good. So probably
Mhm.
I'm going to hate this industry. I'm just going to go do something else. So
Yeah.
definitely I agree is that. And so you were talking about internships, and I'm curious, I know you've also been a part of many fellowships. So which internship, fellowship, or, opportunity has really helped you in this industry that other, students out there should consider pursuing?
So when I was an undergrad at the American University in Cairo, I did a summer internship at GE, and that was the summer between my junior and senior year, right?
Okay.
And while I was doing that internship, they told us about other programs, entry-level programs, and I really learned about the culture at GE. And as I was returning back to Egypt, this position, by the way, was in Schenectady, New York. As I was returning back to Egypt at the end of the summer, I told them I'm interested in applying to this program when I graduate from university, and they interviewed me then and there so that I don't have to come back for an interview. And it was really the internship was the door. It was the door that opened up other doors. And then I did interview for this entry level program. I was fortunate that I got it. And then it became the entry level program was the door to my more permanent position there. And so you need to get your foot in the door. And the internship is the best way to do that. It's a test drive for both of you. I did other internships besides the GE one. And this was by far my favorite. So that's how I knew that I liked this work and I wanted to come back and work for that company up after graduating. Um, so you get to test drive, and it's lower risk. You're not committing the rest of your life. You're committing a summer maybe, and if you like it, you have your foot in the door. If you don't like it, then you know what you like and what you don't like. And it's a win-win.
Yeah, 100%. I know a lot of people do like shadowing experiences if they want to become a doctor, just to know if that's really what they want to do. So I'm really glad that there's so many opportunities out there, like whether it be with professional companies or individual researchers, professors like yourself who are really just open to helping and supporting and sharing their story and work with others to really, see if maybe that's something that I like. And so,
And now
how do
there's a lot, the government labs have a lot of opportunities for both students and faculty. Actually, that's how I came to do the summer fellowships at NASA, is through some of these programs that they have. And I would encourage students to also look through that. It's a huge database because NASA is huge. There's lots of government labs. And so you'll likely find something that piques your interest if you just, put in the time and start looking.
Yeah, I know. And Princeton University is an amazing school. I know they have amazing research opportunities and facilities. I think that's why a lot of students would love to go to Princeton because they have a lot of research opportunities under professors who are really experienced, like yourself, with unique, diverse stories. And I think that's what makes Princeton very attractive to many students to go to. And so, were there any obstacles to you pursuing your passion other than your gender or, your identity? Were there maybe like, maybe moving to a different university maybe impacted you? Was that an obstacle, or were there any obstacles?
Um, Well, the reason I moved to Egypt is that my father and I had gone to visit during Christmas break from RPI, and then he fell into a coma, and
Oh,
so
I'm
I
sorry to
moved
hear.
because initially I just wanted to stay with him until he recovered from the coma, so we can come back to the United States. And eventually he passed away. He never recovered from the coma,
I'm so
and
sorry to hear
then
that.
yeah, so it was kind of a sudden move. So I think the life circumstances surrounding my move were harder than the engineering, for me at least. So my mom said I could go back to the US and live in a dorm and complete my study, but I didn't want to leave my family in Egypt and go back to the US. At that time when we just lost my dad. So I decided to transfer from RPI to AUC. And then I said I could always go to grad school in the United States when things have settled. And that's exactly what I did. Um, I guess that kind of like that goes to show that you'll always have life
Yeah.
happening alongside your education, and it's not bad. It's not something to fear. It's just something that you can embrace and kind of go with the flow. So it wasn't what I had planned out. Obviously, I had planned to go to RPI, then go to Albany Med and live a hunky-dory life. I didn't plan on my father passing away, but I think in the end it was a really great experience being in Egypt. I learned a lot and I became stronger uh, academically as well. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
feel like different countries offer different strengths in their education systems.
yeah.
And you having the opportunity to get the strengths of both really has helped you. I mean, you're a 4.0 GPA student at RPI. I think that is amazing. And so you were able to transfer those skills, but also learn and grow from a different area. So in a different county, in a different
It's
country.
probably the
So I
same
think,
way in India, but it's a large population. It's very competitive. Not everybody can get into engineering. It's basically you have to go to a certain type of high school. So a science high school or an arts high school. If you go to a science high school, then you can go into the science and engineering. And it's just really competitive and really rigorous how you get into an engineering program. So you're actually with the creme de la creme of the population, and because it's a large population, it is, um, I'm sure it's the same way with India. Like the top IIT is
so competitive.
exactly.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of people preparing for the exams like for years, and it's super competitive going to schools like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it actually challenged me in some ways even more than RPI, because the people I was with um, just were really, had to do a lot of obstacles to get there as well.
Yeah.
Like in Egypt, like the top thing to get into is medicine, and then the next one right after that is engineering, and it's really
That's the
rank.
same thing in India. That's the
Yeah,
same. Yeah. It's a really bad system, in my
it
opinion.
is.
I feel like it really forces kids to be like, oh, I have to go. If I want to be the best, I've got to go into medicine, or as a
Yeah,
backup, I have to be an engineer. And it really limits them from the really vast opportunities they have. And
right.
I personally, my family has always taught me whatever career, my parents are very forward thinking because, immigrating from India, they understand the pressures that come from that country, but
Mhm.
they're like, if whatever career you choose, if you work hard and work towards reaching the best you can be, you're going to be perfectly fine in any career you choose. The
Absolutely.
problem comes when you force yourself into a career you don't like and you end up suffering because of it, which is something
Yeah,
my parents were like, never do. Do what you
yeah,
like and then work towards growing in that career. And so I
exactly.
think that's exactly what makes me, that's something that I want to spread to other kids because there's so many societal standards and pressures,
Mhm.
especially in countries like, Egypt or India or different parts of Asia and Europe. I feel like a
Yep.
lot of students go through a lot of pressure. So easing that and showing them you can still grow is important.
Yeah, and it's I mean, if you have to go to a certain high school to be able to choose your career, that means you're
Yeah.
16, 15, 16 years old and already pinned. And
Yeah.
that's not fair,
Yeah.
in my
That's not.
opinion.
Yeah, that's what I love about the US education system is you don't even have to go into college with a decided major.
Exactly.
Most students do, but it's not like a set in stone thing. And you
Mhm.
continuously going into grad school, getting your PhD, you like slowly figure out what you really like to do. And
Mhm.
I think that's what I love about the US system compared to
Mhm.
other countries where you're more predetermined from like 15 years old.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap up the interview, because I
Mhm.
know this conversation has been going well, I could talk with you all day about
Oh, I
different
would love
countries,
to.
different systems, and your life, but I do want to, respect your time. So, what advice do you have for young people regarding their pursuit of a passion in the STEM field or space industry? Because you've been through a lot in terms of, growing up here with your gender, your identity as a person, as well as going to a different country halfway through because of family troubles. You've been through a lot, and I'm sure many students out there are going through similar situations, if not the same. So, what is some advice you would give to them? Something that you wish you knew when you were young?
Um, have a passion, do something with fervor, whatever it is that you want to do, just do it passionately. Um, I thrive on not knowing something and then learning it. I really love, like, I don't know how to ski, so I'll learn to ski. I don't know how to uh, I don't know robotics, so I'm going to take a class in robotics. And that the butterflies that you get initially are wonderful,
Yeah.
and just never stop getting those butterflies, learning it and then mastering it. All the gratification that you get after having had some butterflies initially is super wonderful. It's much more gratifying than doing what you know already, you know?
Yeah,
So
that
I would challenge you to always find things that you want to know and go for it, no matter how scary it may look on the onset. It will be an awesome journey at the end, um, once you've learned it. And so never
yeah.
stop learning. Learn with a passion, and STEM is really exciting. It has given me so many opportunities, both in work and in life. I can travel across the world because of my job. You know, it's
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful experience. So I would encourage everyone to seriously consider it, and yeah,
Thank you
and
so much.
roll
That
and
that
roll
is
and
amazing.
roll with the punches. You can have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan and a 3-year plan, and it's okay if things don't go as planned, because sometimes they go better than you had planned, and just embrace that.
That's amazing advice. I feel like, as a high school student, sometimes we all get stressed out or like, oh, we have to plan every single detail. If we fail this one exam, it's going to ruin the rest of our life because it's going to have a ripple effect. But I think there's this monk I listen to who makes amazing videos, and he was saying how when you're weaving something and you look at the back of it, it's always like messy and there's a lot of threads everywhere, and it looks messy, and you're like, what's happening with my life? But if you look at the final outcome when you turn it around, it's like a beautiful picture, it's a beautiful art. And I think that's something that we did, like just like you were saying, there's obstacles in pursuing your passion is going to change, and I think it's important to find what you love, stick with it regardless of the difficulties, and just keep going with it and finding what you love to do, because those little butterflies are seriously awesome. So I definitely agree with you. So thank you so much, Professor, for doing this interview. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and it was so inspiring for me to see such an amazing, incredible woman. It makes me want to do even more and to become like you. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you
this
so
wonderful
much.
interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Good luck with
Thank you.
everything.